Are you ready to engage in the level of spiritual warfare that will be required to end your exile? Hi, this is Barry Phillips with 10 Minute Torah, continuing with Day 3, Torah Portion Bo. As I stated on Day 1, Moshe is invited to come into where Pharaoh is, probably into his throne room, and recognize the spiritual power that is behind the man seated on the throne in front of him. Make no mistake about it. It is not mere mortal men or women that our warfare is against. It's not even systems per se. It is a spiritual entity that seeks to bring about the kingdom of darkness and its rule and domain over the earth. So this Torah portion is indeed specifically about spiritual warfare. Now, when I say that term, many of us may remember the days of studying Ephesians chapter 6 and putting on the whole armor of Elohim, or 2 Corinthians chapter 10, where we're told that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, spiritual wickedness in high places, and that we are to tear down strongholds, and other such chapters. But this Torah portion is very much about spiritual warfare. Yah has just racked the land with darkness, so much so that it was smothering. The rabbinical minds say that the Hebrew people were also affected. Those that still clung to their idolatry were slain during this darkness. Again, so say the rabbinical commentators. An interesting idea. During this time of darkness, the land was unsettled, and after which Yah says to Moshe, I'm going to send one more plague, and after that, Pharaoh is going to let you go. Now, in verse number 1 of this Torah portion, chapter number 11, it says, and when he lets you go, he shall drive you out from here altogether. Will it be offensive to you that instead of being given a parade and banners waving as you make your exit from exile, if you are told in no uncertain terms that you're no longer desired and we want you out of here, does that upset you? Can you just simply rejoice in that your exile is over? Now, maybe you're one of those who feels as if it's a land of exile, not a bad place to be. And here in America, for those that watch and are living here, it's not a bad place to be. There are a lot of ease and conveniences. We have a lot of choice. We have a lot of personal freedoms and liberties. Yes, they're beginning to be challenged. But what if the land that seems to be bountiful and liberating to us becomes constrictive, narrow? Our liberties are taken away. You may argue, well, it can't happen here. My friend, it can happen anywhere. Again, it depends on the spiritual entities that rule behind the human figureheads who sit in their seats and offices of authority. It just so happens that Yah says to Moshe concerning the land of Mitzrayim, he says, now when you go, you're going to plunder. Tell your people to go and ask of all of their neighbors whatever they desire, gold and silver and fabric and materials, whatever they think that they may need, whatever they would desire. This goes back to the promise that Yah gave to Abraham hundreds of years earlier, where in Bereshit, or Genesis chapter number 15, verses 13 and 14, Yah prophesied to Abraham, saying, know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But the nation whom they serve, I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions. Now, we are being told here that the adversaries are going to be plundered, that we're not going to go out empty-handed. The Hebrew people in Mitzrayim had built cities and structures, even with the cost of their blood and their lives, for the glory of Pharaoh. They never were paid. This was slave, compulsory labor. They went home with broken bodies. Some of them never went home alive, just to work and to do the labor of Pharaoh. Yah says that a workman or a laborer is worthy of his hire. And Proverbs 13:22, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. Have we not heard that? Many times from pulpits we have heard it preached that the wicked's wealth and riches, that we're going to get them. And I've heard it to the degree that I've almost heard a spirit of greed take over, where we would say to those that live wickedly around us, go ahead, build your fortunes, gather your money, build your homes. It's going to be ours. It's going to all be ours. Well, let's keep in mind that the Hebrews that came out with great possessions did so because they earned those possessions. I don't know that sitting in a pew in a building or on a seat in a congregation affords you and I the right to go and to plunder someone who lives sinfully. After all, we would have to ask ourselves, what did we do for them? What labor have we been caused to perform in order for us to need to be repaid? I can't think of any. So if we're going to plunder this nation, your place of exile, before you leave, there needs to be some labor spent in that nation's behalf. At least that we would be on our knees crying out that the Father would show mercy to the nation and mercy to its people. We can throw up our hands and say, well, they're all wicked and it's going to come down to destruction anyway. Why pray for it? Some number of years ago, there was a hurricane threatening the East Coast here of Virginia, which would have come right through my home, our locale here, our county. And it was to be a Category 3 or so it was possibly forecasted to be. And in my mind, I was saying, let it come. This area needs to be brought to its knees. This area needs to understand the wrath of Elohim. We need to become broken so that we'll make teshuvah and turn and repent. The Father challenged me in my automobile that day with such praying and thinking and said, do you really want me to destroy people? Are you asking me to kill people, to destroy the substructure of this entire area? Well, people will suffer and be in want, and others would die because of not being able to get their medical supplies or food or water. Are you asking me to allow this level of suffering on your community? And he challenged me about not having compassion or not seeking for mercy. And so I had to rethink my prayer life. And through that, the Father added, there is indeed coming a day where destruction will come and the wrath of Elohim will be displayed. But as for right now, mercy can be still shown. Seek me for mercy. We need to seek the Father for mercy. While mercy may be found, while forgiveness can be offered, let us seek the face of the Father and ask him for such. The days where we will get what we need to go where we need to go and to build what must be built, those days will come. But that day is not today, at least not yet. More on this tomorrow. And until then, shalom.